recognize that guy up there. Great. Well, good afternoon. It's good to be here. It's my first visit to Poland. I've been asked to talk to you today about some really interesting business opportunities for Polish fintech companies who are looking at expanding and scaling into the UK. I think most people are aware that London is a global market for fintechs, and in fact, it's the fintech companies that tell us that from Silicon Valley, from Mumbai, from Israel, and from other parts of Europe, that it's the place to go to. But also, one of the things I want to tell you about are some really interesting business opportunities outside of the capital, outside of London, that I think a lot of people are missing. And also about opportunities in sectors outside of financial services. Okay. So we know skills are really important, the things that we actually need. We know that having the right sort of infrastructure and the importance of networks and ecosystems. But the thing we all need as a fintech company are customers. How do we find them? How do we identify them? And going to some of the big cities like New York, like London, the competition is huge. Everybody's got a payment solution. Half the fintech solutions are starting to sound almost the same. How do you differentiate and how do you find new markets? Let me tell you a little bit about the UK and how it's made up. You'll see, and I'm going to start at the bottom and talk to you through some of the regions and where some of the opportunities are. Right at the bottom, you can probably see number 13. That's a city called Brighton. And in Brighton, you have American Express, who've got thousands of employees, the European HQ. And round there, they're looking for and actually working with fintech, insurtech, regtech companies from all over the world. So an immense amount of opportunities, an immense amount of skills. And that's where the decision makers are. They're not in London, they're actually there. And as we move up to probably around about number 4 and number 5, that's a city called Bristol, where a huge number of the UK's insurance companies are based. In fact, some of the biggest Spanish insurance companies have actually been investing heavily in there. And of course, they're looking for and actively seeking partners to help them develop and disrupt the insurance industry. Great opportunities. Number 2 is our second biggest city, Birmingham. Birmingham's got 6,000 Deutsche Bank employees based there. HSBC has recently put 2,500 IT people in there. And again, it's a booming city looking for great solutions. And it's got a huge manufacturing population and advanced manufacturing around that area. And just moving up to 7 and 6, which is Glasgow and Edinburgh. Edinburgh has the highest number of bank head offices outside of London. It's got a very strong fintech ecosystem. Number 7 in Glasgow, you've got a huge sector of wealth management. Again, really looking and asking to find and see solutions for people to work with them. But an area I'm going to talk a little bit more about is probably 9, 10, 15, and 8 in the middle. And that's an area consisting of Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, and Newcastle. It's an area that we call the Northern Powerhouse. Let me give you some interesting stats or metrics on this. So the blue area, there's nearly 17 million people live in that area. So in itself, it's as big, if not bigger, than 30 other European countries. 40%, in fact, they're now saying over 50% of UK payments, the technology, the platforms, the infrastructure, are going through a city called Leeds, based there. There's 11 times more people working in the financial services sector than in Frankfurt. And we're told Frankfurt is a global financial sector. And looking at EY's figure here, that if you took the Northern Powerhouse gross value added figure, it'd be the 9th biggest economy in Europe. So a great market opportunity. And some of the brands, I'm sure quite a lot of them you'll recognize. Yorkshire Bank is probably one that maybe many of you have not heard about, but Yorkshire and Clydesdale, they're just spending at the moment millions of pounds developing platforms, actively looking for innovative, creative solutions from fintech, AML, KYC, and they're out there and they're asking for people, they're looking to talk to companies. So great opportunity. And they're based up in Leeds. Virgin Money, based in Leeds. Virgin Bank, based in Newcastle. First Direct was the first digital bank set up, and that is based in Leeds. RBS, I'm sure you're familiar with. Bank of America have their European HQ there, with their IT and digital solutions. Cooperative Bank is a local bank based in Manchester. And BNY Mellon have their European infrastructure there, where they're managing assets. So people who've got really good solutions around stress testing, doing anything to do with asset analytics, there's a really good opportunity in Liverpool and Manchester, where those two offices are actually based. Insurance, very much the same. And again, you'll recognize the Allianz AXA. But let me point you to Hiscox, probably a company many of you have not heard of. They're quite a large company, insurance. They've got a huge operation in Yorkshire. They freed up a large space in their building, and they've invited fintechs from all over the world. And they said, look, the first thing is, we hope you don't know anything about insurance, because we want you to come in, look at our processes, and be as disruptive as possible. And if you are, then we want to work with you, and we want to help and develop. So you can start to see the appetite. It's rather than the big cities where everybody's going and knocking on the door. In the Northern Powerhouse, the companies are reaching out, and it's them who are doing the pitching and saying, this is what we need. We want to work with you. Another thing that I guess, and I go to a lot of markets around the world and people have never heard of, are building societies. Has anybody in the room ever heard of them? I know you have. So not very many. Well, building societies were set up about 100 years ago in the UK, and their sole purpose was to help the normal average working person get a mortgage so they could buy a property. And since then, they've developed. They now have current accounts. They're all registered banks, and they're actually doing company and corporate accounts as well. There are 43 of them in the UK, with 40 of them in the north. And at the moment, they are so far behind in terms of technology and applications, they've suddenly woken up and realized they need to invent themselves. And they're on an active mission to say, we desperately want to meet companies from anywhere ever they are who can actually introduce us and work with us on actually helping us get into the 21st century. The biggest fear is that the graduates and the people leaving universities are not going to actually look at their products because they're just not sexy, they're just not as competitive and up to date. So they've got huge amounts of budget to spend, and they're now actively going out into the markets and seeking people. Halifax you may have heard of because they're part of RBS, but they are now, as I say, really keen to meet companies from all over. Let's talk about sectors outside of the financial services. And it's been the first market to go to, even for my own fintech business, you know, going to the insurance and to the banking companies. But more and more, let's look at food and drink. There are more regulations in food and drink than there are in financial services. Many of the food and drink companies, most of them not based in Yorkshire, most of them are based in the north, they've started to use blockchain technology. And why? Because they're actually manufacturing, they're producing, they're growing products, and they need to prove to markets like the Middle East what the content of the final product is. And they need to make sure that's secure. They're also doing international payments. So that's really important to them. They're moving money around the world, so things like cyber, security are actually key to what they're doing. Health and life science. Well, in the UK, we have a huge drug testing industry. Most of the US drug and pharma companies test their products and get them licensed in the UK. And one of the big gaps and opportunities for Polish companies, if you're a regtech, is there's a big opportunity there. And we're actually looking openly to meet regtech companies that we can introduce to some of the players there in the market. The public sector, like many governments across Europe, the local governments in the city have had major cutbacks in financing. What does that mean? They still have to provide the same services, but with less people. They need technology. And we've got about 100 local authorities, who are all starting now to engage with fintech companies from all over the world about how they can reduce the paper, how they can actually manage millions of invoices, how they can collect taxes, and how they can work with new technologies to be far more efficient, not just saving money, but actually to give a better service to the people they represent. And the same in new renewable energies, advanced manufacturing. They're all starting to represent really good opportunities for fintechs. So one of the things that the UK government did was said, well, everybody's going to London. Let's give people an opportunity to have a taste of the North. So we got 20 fintech companies from the Nordic and the Baltic countries. We invited them up to Manchester and Leeds, and we put them in front of 60 companies, 109 business people, including the banks, the building societies I mentioned, also VCs, fintech investors, and potential partners. They also had the opportunity to pitch to them. And very quickly, what happened? Over 50% of them within 2 months were actively doing business. And in fact, since those figures we've put up, 5 to 6 of those companies have set up offices. They've got businesses with First Direct, with Atom Bank, with some of the insurance companies. They've found partners to work on very large-scale opportunities with, and they've actually generated and actually managed to raise significant amounts of capital. Moving on. So one of the things we're doing this year, and the government's doing, and I've got the eye on the clock here, because they said when I go over time, they'll pass a mild electric shock through this box I've got on the back, so I'm a little bit nervous. So one of the things the government are doing is we're going to fund 2 Polish companies to go to Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds to meet with a large number of banks, insurance companies, building societies, merchants, payments people, potential partners, VCs, fintech angels. They'll have the opportunity to pitch, and they'll also have the opportunity to listen to pitches from some of the big organizations who are going to tell them, this is what we're looking for in terms of solutions, this is what we're looking for in terms of help and partnership working. And that's going to be in February. And if there's any of you in the room who are interested in doing that, then we can speak afterwards, or as my colleague here from the British Embassy in Walsall, we can help you actually go through that process. And there are no costs involved, it's all funded by the government. And some of the companies you'll be able to meet, these are just as many as I could fit on one slide, but they include many of the big names above. And in addition to that, we've got lots of the big law firms. A lot of the US law companies have set up their major operations in cities like Manchester. And again, they're really looking for different types of solutions in terms of security, working with the clients. They're also big employers, so things like invoicing, payments, they've got international global payments. So there's a lot of interesting businesses over there. So I guess, in conclusion, London is a fantastic opportunity. The UK is brilliant because we've got the PSD2. We're the only comprehensive country that's actually running with that at the moment in terms of fully active, where you've got multiple applications and opportunities. 17 out of the top 50 global fintechs are based there, and the opportunities for Polish fintechs in the regions are tremendous at the moment, and we'd certainly welcome and love to see some of you there. So I hope that's given you a little bit of information. I hope that was interesting to you. Thank you very much.